help women, save lives, and peacefully end abortion where you live.
I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired.
You were serious about that?
Be inspired to change hearts and minds by joining over 1 million volunteers taking part in the global movement happening in your neighborhood.
She says, pray that I can get through this abortion. And I said, oh, no. So she went ahead and went into the abortion clinic. And she just came out. She told us, I'm not going to get the abortion. We just had a baby saved. We had a baby saved in Memphis today. Praise the Lord.
This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the 40 Days for Life podcast. I am Sean Carney, the president of 40 Days for Life, and your host for this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you end abortion where you live. We are overpopulated, so we got to start killing folk. That is the topic of today's podcast, is overpopulation. It has resurfaced, and Steve Carlin and I wrote about overpopulation and what to say when to. So be sure to order that. We have been so excited about all the pre-sales, and you can order it directly from us. You get a signed copy. If you do that, you also get free shipping. We have special discounts at 40daysforlife.com. Just click on the store. And we make more money off that. It supports our mission. So if you want to do that, order it directly from us. And yes, you can still get it from Amazon. So we are very excited about that release next Tuesday. And today we're going to cover overpopulation and how saying that we're underpopulated is becoming popular. So somebody who is with me who is extremely popular and has contributed significantly to the overpopulation of Earth is Mr. Steve Carlin. Steve, how are you?
Hey, glad to be here. And no, the world is not overpopulated, but I'm doing my best to change that.
Yes, we are underpopulated, which is why we're extremely grateful that we have a lot of children. So Heather is also here from Austin. Austin is overpopulated, actually. There's too many people there.
There's too many of certain types of people there.
I'm going to convert myself to the other side based on Austin.
Someone we're going to be talking a little bit about on this podcast is relocating his business to Austin.
Another business. So
yet another one.
Yet another business. Elon is in Austin. Joe Rogan is in Austin. And they are two people we will discuss today because they believe we are underpopulated.
What about Matthew McConaughey? What does he believe? He's in Austin. All right.
He loves everybody. Heather, we're not overpopulated. Go to the lake. All right. It's Mary Lisa's favorite.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Talk like Matthew McConaughey.
That's great.
Okay. So let's get into this because Steve has a flight to catch, so we don't get to banter. Yes,
Never
says the
us
listener. Yeah. Wonderful. Okay, we're going to start with some comedy. The last presidential election, Bernie Sanders vowed to make abortion part of his plan to reduce the world's population and avoid a climate catastrophe. What is that, by the way? What's a climate catastrophe? Like, is that a hurricane? I had a hurricane hit my house 2 months ago.
Do you remember that scene from Ghostbusters where he says dogs and cats are living together and there's mass chaos?
You know the whole line. You have it memorized. What is it? It's great.
I don't remember the whole thing.
Okay.
Biblical proportions, cats and dogs living together, mass chaos, something to that effect.
Yeah, it's a great line. So that's climate, because we had global warming and then it was discovered that the Earth's not getting warmer. So now we have climate change, which my issue with is, isn't that like every day? Like, isn't the climate supposed to change? Like in the morning it's cooler and then it's hotter at 2 and then it gets cooler again?
I think it's known as a non-falsifiable hypothesis where any evidence you have proves it. If it's colder, it proves it's true. If it's hotter, it proves it's true. If it rains a lot, it proves it's true. If it snows a lot, it proves it's true. If it doesn't snow at all, it proves it's true.
The environmentalists have made a mistake that the pro-life movement can't make. And that is, we kind of grew up with this stuff. Like it started like kind of in the late 90s. The world's polluted. So
After we moved on from the ozone, which nobody talks
nobody
about.
knew what the ozone was.
True,
Then there
yeah.
were like restaurants and like video games and like roller coasters that were named Ozone, like just because people liked to say ozone.
Yeah, you get like, these are the ozone-free Cheerios. I'm
Right.
Like, I don't think there was ever ozone in my Cheerios.
You're hurting the ozone.
Yeah.
You can actually hurt it, like shooting it with a bow and arrow or something. So people like to say ozone. It's just like the Seinfeld. Salsa is now the #1 condiment. Do you know why? Because people like to say salsa. So here's their mistake, is that we're like, yeah, I visited my uncle in Los Angeles. I was in the 5th grade, and we like drove over the hill and we saw LA, and there was like this weird stuff in the sky, and it looked dirty. Like we need to clean up the earth. So everybody's intrigued and interested. And then they went nuts. And they went nuts with overpopulation. They went nuts with the world's going to end. I remember The Day After Tomorrow. That was a movie, and it came out, I think, in 2004. And Al Gore was campaigning for John Kerry. And at the convention, they showed a preview of The Day After Tomorrow, like, I don't know, tidal waves like destroying New York City. And he's like, this is what's going to happen if we reelect George W. Bush. And you're like, you need to chill out, Al. And all that stuff, and they went so extreme, where we're going to get to Elon, where it ends with you killing people. But that's like the pro-lifers saying, and they're in there eating the babies, and saying all of our, and you're like, gosh, you kind of had me at like the biology of the unborn and the rights and how we don't allow the pregnant women on the roller coasters. All that makes sense. But now you're like, now you're saying that, they're eating the babies, or that, it gets into crazy land, with the exception of like selling the baby body parts, which they were actually doing. I wish we were making that up. But that's a huge mistake with the environmentalists, because they've lost me. I think they're all crazy, and it's like paganism. And it's a total scam. But that's a big problem. So when you have Bernie Sanders say that we need abortion because of the population, and a few weeks ago, Kamala Harris said that she respects people with no children making the sacrifice so that they could save the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Pathological.
What a nut.
Former royalties have also said that as well. Royals, I should say.
Who?
Prince Harry and what's her face? We're going to intentionally not have X amount of children for the sake of the population and the climate crisis.
And so the climate stuff has now gotten into the abortion debate. What's ironic is that it's totally false. Like, we're underpopulated, and the Earth is for us. We're supposed to live here, and populate it. So, and then they don't address, like, none of the environmental people will address the issue of the oceans. Okay, so we're depleting the oceans. Y'all aware of this? Where like 90% of the big fish are gone because we like sushi, as Joe Rogan put it. But like, we eat them. Because think there's a lot of people living in the world, so there's more people fishing. We need more tuna. We need more, whatever, halibut, all that. And so, like, the ocean, but you never hear the environmentalists is like, but the fish are actually underpopulated, and that could lead to kind of a food.
So this is a real problem?
This is a real problem.
That's not good. I love fish.
Me too. But I mean, this is kind of dumb, but like, I don't know. I go to the beach, I look at the ocean, I'm like, there's got to be plenty of fish.
The ocean is very large.
We're going to run out of shrimp.
I know, that's what I'm not heard of this.
Maybe, yeah. It's a thing. The oceans are being depleted. And it's not like because we spilled oil. It's because
that's what I thought it was going to be.
We're fishing them.
Or the plastics are killing in the ocean, which is unfortunately illegitimate.
So that'd be different. Like, if the environmentalists were saying that, I'd be like, oh, you're full of crap, because I don't believe anything they say anymore. But if you say there's a lot of people on Earth, more than 300 years ago, when we didn't have like these massive, and we're gonna go out with like nets, and there's a whole fish industry. the fish can't reproduce fast enough to keep up with the population.
I'm curious about this because I also remember being in like school and we were going to run out of oil. And as far as I can tell, we've got more oil than we've ever had.
That kind of ended.
Yeah.
Like that we're going to run out of oil and we need to, and I don't know if that was part of the craze of like, we need to create, you know, the oil companies are evil and we're going to run out of oil. We need to create an electric car so that we can bury batteries in the earth that never decompose. But I don't know. I just think that that's a huge mistake that they've made. And now they're saying not having people on earth is good for the environment.
You know, remember when we did the podcast on the devil and we're like, it shouldn't be a controversial take to say that the devil is the bad guy?
Yeah.
This is
You said that.
human being of all the creatures on earth, human beings are the best ones, and that should not be a controversial take. God told us to subdue the earth. That doesn't mean abuse it, but subdue it. Like all of this is subject to us by divine right. And even if you don't believe in God, what's better than human beings? Like some of these people, like that if you heard of this voluntary human extinction movement where we just all quit having babies until the last one turns out the lights. I don't know. I think people are wonderful.
Bunch of psychopaths. Okay, so I just want to go through some stats. Number one, season 4, episode 39 of our podcast, we talked to demographer Dr. Leighton Field, and he's a sociologist and a demographer, and he informed us that half the sociologists in the world believe we're overpopulated and half believe we're underpopulated, which I nearly fell out of my chair when he said that. And he's like, this is a secular thing. This isn't like the 6 little evangelical, you know, and Catholic sociologists getting in a room. This is all of them at their international We're Crazy conference. When we recorded that 5 years ago, and, you know, nobody was talking about us being underpopulated. And Dr. Field was, you know, kind of a nut.
It's one of the best podcast episodes we've ever done.
Yeah, it was. And you and I were like learning as we go. Like we were actually interviewing him, having no idea what he was going to say. He could have said, no, we're totally overpopulated. We didn't know what he was going to say.
Turned into a book chapter and what to say when one.
That's right.
Yeah.
We didn't give him any royalties or anything. We just ripped off everything that he said.
Former royalties, yeah. Okay, so here we go. Here's the evidence. Real stuff. The U.S. birth rate hit a historic low last year. Again. Boo.
Asia and Europe are collapsing demographically. This is what's insane. Yep. In Japan, a third of the population is over 65. Also in Japan, their population decreases by 800,000 people a year.
Whoa.
No, there will be no Japanese people in like 15 years. This is another thing we need to have Dr. Leighton Field back on. But like, that's unbelievable.
That matches with the report that came out a few years ago that more adult diapers are sold in Japan than baby diapers.
And they just won't have children. Part of this gets into another discussion about the nuke, of like post that and just the culture there, how it changed and all that. So that's a different discussion.
You're looking at a Walker Percy book right now as you talk about this, are you not?
Oh, yeah, totally. Well, that's one of his great quotes is the fear is not that the nukes are going to go off. The fear may be that the nukes may never go off. More uplifting quotes from Walker Percy. But by the end of the century, the global population will begin shrinking for the first time since the Black Death.
Oh, gosh.
You're a history major, I believe. I'm not, but the Black Death sounds like a very bad thing.
Sounds bad, yeah.
That's like 2/3 of Europe. I mean, people don't, it's one of those things that the insane people in our government like wanted COVID to be.
Yeah.
Like we're all gonna die. And then like March passes, April passes, you're like, my grandma got it. She didn't die. She's like a chain smoker. And you just realize COVID's not the Black Death. But the Black Death is, we do not want that. All right, here we go. By 2100.
Which is in how many years?
We'll be dead, for sure.
76 years.
Speak for yourself.
Speak for yourself.
Do you want to live that long?
Bicentennial man right here.
You'd be
117.
117?
Yeah.
You can do
It
it.
depends on if you physically can still get to the Packer games and use your tickets. Because you would have really gotten your money's worth out of those tickets. Because it's lifelong, right?
Yes. Will Dallas win another Super Bowl before then?
Oh.
I'd be 118. I'd be a year older or 2 years older. I'd be 119. I think I'd like if I'm 119, which I think I'm good with checking in at 80 and riding off, But like, I'd want to live to be 125 if I made it to 119. It's a good round number.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not so much to ask.
By 2100, 97% of countries are expected to have fertility rates below the replacement levels. So the replacement level is 2.1 because of tragedy.
And that makes sense. That's not like the world's going to end in 12 years.
But that's 97% of countries are expected to have fertility rates. I had a conversation with Dr. Field, and we're going to have him on. We definitely need to have him on. But there were these little snippets as I was peppering him with questions. And Africa and Latin America are having children. So I was like, what does this look like? Like Europe and Asia? Like, he said, there's going to be a worker crisis. Okay. And the fight for Africans will be intense because we'll need like engineers and doctors and everybody because we won't replace the jobs.
That's what's going on with priests in the Catholic Church right now.
Exactly. Which is, in somewhat has been a spiritual collapse. This would be an economic collapse. And that's scary.
Yeah.
And it's all because the irony is we're the most promiscuous society in the history of the world.
That is.
There's a great line out of The Departed that we can't say, but yeah, it's all that and no kids. But it's one of those things where all of this crap that we hear about having kids and not having, kids are expensive and all that. This has actual consequences when you don't have children, which is very unnatural, actually, to not reproduce, right? And to not reproduce deliberately. It's not like mosquitoes take use condoms. So this whole notion, don't edit that out, Joe. But that's another Walker Piercy line, I'm sure. But like you can't actually contracept and abort yourself out of existence. And that's basically what we're doing. 97% of countries are expected to have a fertility rate below the replacement levels.
Don't you want to know what the 3% are? If this were like 80%, I'd be like, okay,
Malta?
Africa. Malta's kind of turned their back on hope.
Croatia?
I don't know.
Poland.
I'd be surprised if Poland is on the list.
Yeah.
It's probably an African country.
That's what I would guess. How many countries are there in the world? 200 something? 180 something?
I thought there were 197.
If I had that Animaniacs song memerized, I could tell you.
So we're talking basically like 5 or 6 countries will have positive population growth.
Right. And so here we go. This is great. Elon Musk. So many people, including smart people, think that there are too many people in the world and think that the population is growing out of control. It's completely the opposite. Look at the numbers. If people don't have more children, civilization is going to crumble. Mark my words. He's a good mark my words guy because he's a genius, and so it's not like an athlete saying we're going to the playoffs. Mark my words, which also is cool. But when it's a genius like mark my words, everybody's like, I'm writing that down.
You may love Elon, you may hate Elon, but you should probably listen when Elon talks.
Who hates Elon?
All the people who are mad that he restored free speech on Twitter.
Yes.
Okay, and we care what they think, I guess. Okay. All right, so this is Elon again on Joe Rogan. This is what's crazy. See, this is where social media is awesome, okay? Because nobody watches the mainstream media anymore, thank God. And they go to YouTube. and this was like Jordan Peterson's point, the senior class, the 2024 senior class that just graduated high school is the most conservative class in the history of America since we've tracked that, okay? And it's because they went into their freshman year in 2020, COVID. So their mistrust of government, which tends to lead you to be conservative, is like through the roof, right? They're like the hippies were, except instead of Vietnam, it's COVID. Okay, so they're the most conservative, just like the hippies were the most liberal. And Dr. Jordan Peterson was on Fox explaining this. It was like a secular study. It's not like it's not swayed either way. And they said, "Well, why is that?" And he said, "Well, probably because they're listening to Joe Rogan." And the Fox reporter laughed, and he said, "I'm serious," And that whole thing where you have this. Basically, YouTube, I would say, is far more conservative than it is between. I know Rogan's probably a drug addict and supports legalization of marijuana.
He's not conservative. He would not describe himself.
He would not
that way.
describe himself, but he's definitely leaning on and he's definitely mistrusts the government and the COVID stuff and all that. But when you take him and Jordan Peterson and the whole Daily Wire crew, there's a lot of wackos on YouTube, but it is amazing how you have these massive followings that are alternatives to the mainstream media. Okay, so anyways, this is Elon on the Joe Rogan Show.
We've got audio of this one.
Great, let's air it now.
I mean, I'm pro-environment, but the in the limit, if you take environmentalism to an extreme, you start to view humanity as a plague on the surface of the earth, like a mold or something.
Right.
But this is actually false. The earth could take probably 10 times the current civilization. The population you could 10x the population without destroying the rainforest. So the environmental movement, and I'm an environmentalist, has gone too far. They've gone way too far. If you start thinking that humans are bad, then the natural conclusion is humans should die out. Now, I'm headed to an international sort of AI safety conference later tonight, leaving in about 3 hours. I meet with the British Prime Minister, a number of other people. So you have to say, how could AI go wrong? Well, if AI gets programmed by the extinctionists, its utility function will be the extinction of humanity.
That's a nice little happy, pleasant thought. AI leading to the, quote, extinction of humanity, end quote.
So I believe this is the case, and everybody's like, we don't know where AI leads, and it's kind of a fun conversation. It's supposed to be, and I'm like, we do know where it leads, because in 1991, James Cameron told us through Terminator 2 that Skynet becomes self-aware. The scary thing is the same thing could happen because of our current relationship with Russia. We nuke Russia, which provokes Russia to nuke us, and it's the end of the world because of AI. People don't take this seriously. Have you seen Terminator 2?
No.
Can I go on my little aside here that
You're part of the problem.
Self-aware computers are impossible and nobody should worry about them?
Yeah, talk me off the ledge, because they show that nuke scene multiple times in Terminator 2, and it freaks me out.
I can't say it's not going to nuke us. It just won't be self-aware if it does so.
Okay, well, I'm more concerned with the nuking part than I am the technicality.
You're on your own.
Steve's right, and that's the main
How
point.
come they can't be self-aware because they don't have souls?
Yes, and there's this sort of notion among some of the extinctionist dweebs that we can replace people, and that as long as intelligence remains, it doesn't matter if it's human intelligence or artificial intelligence. And they have this idea that if you can just create the data processing at such a high speed that it will magically become self-aware. This is just my little pet interest here. I've read a ton about it. There was a guy named Kurt Gödel who was a genius. He taught at Princeton. Einstein went to Princeton because Gödel was there. So that kind of tells you how smart he is. And he has a mathematical proof that something that is merely composed of matter could not become self-aware. It's sort of an indirect proof of the soul and probably of God.
That's very uplifting, and that calms me. Well, why then could they still nuke us? Just because they hit the wrong switch?
This is what Elon says. If it gets programmed, like all of the AI stuff has certain incentives. What is it designed to do? And if you get what he calls the woke mind virus, if that's the ideology that is programming it, it will seek solutions that lead to the eradication of people. I don't think they'll use nukes.
I don't think they will either, because nukes are bad for the environment, ironically. But it is. This is filling the vacuum when you throw out God.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty. Matt and I always talk about this, like hurricanes or whatever. Whatever, a nuke goes off. You have to be prepared for an emergency. You can't live in an emergency. And these people live in an emergency. And that's a horrible way to live.
Greta Thunberg.
She's crazy. Talk about child abuse.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is the world's going to end because of all these people. Well, you'll kill for that.
Including yourself.
Right, to prevent the end of the world and then pat yourself on the back. But now everything is for the environment. And the environment is like, it's like the resurrection of Christ. Like, you can't touch it. Like, why are you doing this? The environment. And it's like you can't say anything. And it's like, it's so dumb.
Have you seen the data on millennial and Gen Z women and use of antidepressants?
No.
We're talking like, I can't remember the numbers, but it's through the roof.
Through the roof.
Through the roof.
In general, after COVID, it was already bad before COVID. COVID made that just increase significantly more.
But if you believe everything that Sean is describing, that we've got 7 years, 3 years, 11 years to save the planet, or else it's all over, how would you not be depressed? I want to be careful here, because anytime you mention antidepressants, there's people who get angry, chemical imbalance. Like, I'm not denying any of that.
No, and they're in a lot of ways they're a gift, of medicine, but it's like anything else.
But if we're approaching 1 in 3, 1 in 2 in certain, like half of a certain demographic is on them, like there's something beyond a chemical imbalance going on here.
Yeah.
It's social contagion that's fueling a lot of this.
Yeah, well, and Fulton Sheen has a great argument about the psychological power of guilt. Like we
Catholics are pretty good with them.
Well, we're very good at it, but we have confession also, and if there's something psychologically freeing about saying the worst things about yourself, to someone out loud. It's like Father Groeschel said, Christ is the great master, but he's also the great psychiatrist. And
my friend Father Chris says there's no such thing as Catholic guilt. There's just guilt.
There's no such thing as Catholic guilt. There's just guilt. Like, you're just guilty. You're making me feel bad. No, you just feel bad because of the guilt, and you don't have to feel that way. Like, you can repent. Okay, how not to solve the problem? This has been proven. Throw money at it. Here we go. This is so sad. In Japan, the government launched a dating app and is offering a year of parental leave plus cash incentives.
Is there like a drawing involved in this? This sounds like a sweepstakes.
They won't go on dates.
Yeah.
And so I asked a naive question. Because dating is dead in Japan. So I asked an expert in Japan, how does that
how does that play out?
Yeah, like they don't have relationships, and they're like, no, they meet and have sex, and that's it.
If that.
There's a word in Japanese, and the closest approximation to it in English, this is a word that's used when people are asked why they're not dating. The English approximation is, I can't be bothered.
Wow.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's just unnatural. I mean, we all had like some crush on some girl in high school or whatever. The Japanese are just immune to this. They just don't. They don't have a desire to go to the prom.
No, but if you want to go into specifics, it's not an accident that the pornography usage across the world
this is their thing.
And they're weird robots.
Yes,
enough said.
Exactly. Yes.
All right, well, I'm moving on from that.
Which that is portrayed in certain movies, which is like disgusting, and yet that's.
I have a request I'm gonna put on my CEO hat. I never want Steve to say the word robots ever again.
It's on the list next to sexual deviant.
Yeah, sexual deviant. And you said weird robots, and your eyes got big.
Yeah,
and now I'm gonna have nightmares.
Your face says it all. Oh, gosh.
Oh man. Okay, don't go to Japan and talk to the. Stay away from the robots. They're all a bunch of perverts. Okay, South Korea. South Korea, with the lowest fertility rate in the world, is offering money to reverse sterilization and is paying families 5 figures in their child's first year. So you get like 10 grand? You have a kid?
I would like to get in on some of this.
Oh, you and I would clean up over
Oh
there.
my gosh, yeah. Y'all would be so rich.
That's actually
Good food, too.
That was a stimulus experience, right? Like, I think my experience, they were giving cash payments per child.
That was also stupid.
It was, but in the moment, it was great.
Of course.
Big fan.
Do you know how many?
Steve's like, we're getting a new ping pong table.
Yes, that's what I was gonna say. You know how many families are like, and this is our COVID hot tub.
Yeah,
This is our
we had the
like
COVID ping pong table.
We broke the system. When they put the stimulus together, like, no one's dumb enough to have this many kids. Right here, I'm dumb enough.
I'm dumb enough.
Show me the money.
What do you think the houses cost in South Korea?
Oh.
Seoul is supposed to be really nice. I've been invited to speak there by the pro-life group in South Korea. But yeah, we have to look at that. Times get tough. Okay, in Hungary, if you have 4 babies or more, you are exempt from income tax for life.
Count me in.
Budapest.
You both fall in that category.
Have you been to Hungary?
No.
Me neither. I don't think we want to live there. But I don't know.
I've heard it's beautiful.
I've heard it's gorgeous. I've heard a lot of things, though. Okay. But these policies don't work.
Dang it.
The Oxford Institute of Population Aging, Professor Sarah Harper, it encourages a mini baby boom followed by a baby crash as those women who would have spread childbearing across several years all go at the same time just to get the cash bonus. That's interesting. So they've studied this and it doesn't work. Dr. Field said that and he didn't explain it, but he's like, yeah, the incentives don't work.
Last time I talked to him about it, I think it was at the March for Life one year.
The incentives don't work for the big picture.
For the big picture.
Yeah.
He said, this is the stat.
Yeah.
He said in Italy right now, if every woman in Italy of childbearing age, okay, that's everybody, just biologically they could have kids. If they all had 10 children, he's like, it would be like a blip on their, that's how decimated they are in their population. If every woman in Italy had 10 kids today, he's like, it'd be like a blip on the radar.
Oh.
Europe is kind of just a big museum, right? I love Europe. I'm a Europhile. I think you're a Europhile.
Yes.
You're a Europhile?
I've never heard of this term.
I haven't either, but I think I am.
Oh. Just file is love.
Love it. I love it.
I would say I fall in that.
Like, here's the when I think about Europe, like intellectually, like we're talking about right now, it's depressing. And basically, they just pissed away the faith. That's the way I put it. There's no other way to say it. I apologize. But like they did. And you can't beat around the bush. It's not a crisis. They had it. And they have this rich history of martyrs and saints and churches. And they just abandon it. And I would say, too, they could say, well, the Catholic Church has scandals. I guess they would use a French accent. But not when all this was going on. They had great popes, they had great saints, they had great Catholic leadership, and they just absolutely torched it to the ground. And, and look at the work mainly of John Paul II, trying to restore. It's why Pope Benedict chose Benedict.
Yes.
He's the patron saint of Europe. He's the father of monasticism. And he basically was saying Europe is pagan, like when St. Benedict was alive, and we're going to re-evangelize it, and I'm choosing Benedict's name. Which was beautiful. But so I say all that, but then when I go, I'm not depressed. I'm still kind of edified, like particularly Ireland. Ireland's the worst and frustrating, and my family's from there, so it's like it's even deeper. But there's still kind of this like they're playing dress up. Like, can you really? Does anybody care about a Christless Ireland?
Here's the comparison that I would make. We've both been on pilgrimage in Europe and we've gone to Mexico. If you go on pilgrimage to Europe and go to the great holy sites, there's a different energy in Mexico because the faith is alive in Mexico City when we go see Our Lady of Guadalupe. Just alive. And that's not to say you don't see glimpses of it. You see glimpses of the faith in some places God-forsaking as Canada. But sorry to gratuitous shot at the Canadians. No, but I mean, Canada is probably the most secularized Western country I think that there is. And so that's why I say that. But
it's
you'll
the most
find
pro-abortion Western country also.
You'll find glimpses of it everywhere, but in some of these places, whether it be Latin America or Africa, which you've mentioned, you find a faith that is alive. And you find some of it in the United States, thanks be to God. But Europe, it's kind of like a museum.
But Europe will mess with you. Okay, let's take France. And of course, we're ticked off at France because of the Olympics. But I love France.
You're a Francophile.
What does that mean? Oh.
You love France.
I like it. Okay. If I were a Francophobe, I would not like the French.
You would be a bigot.
The only thing they never surrendered to was bad wine. Like that? Okay. So weird things will happen in Europe. Okay? In Paris, 1 million people marching against gay marriage. Actually, it's 2 million. Sorry, it's 2 million people marching against gay marriage in France, which is just like, what? Like, where'd that come from? I had some priest friends that studied over there, and they were like, this is before the Muslims burned down Notre Dame, the Cathedral of Notre Dame.
That's a hot take. We haven't covered that before.
Yeah, the Muslims had nothing to do with it. They don't attack churches, Steve. So
I'm just surprised. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing. I just didn't know.
Isn't that well known?
I thought it was a construction accident. That's what I heard.
That's what I heard.
Great. That 9/11. So this priest would go and he would like say daily mass a lot at the cathedral, and he's like, there were like 600 people there. And I know it's a huge thing, but he's like, they were all young. So I have had these like pockets, and there's somewhat in Ireland like the vocation like plummet is starting to, like, it's hit rock bottom. Okay. It's starting to climb. So I do think we pick on them, but with the gradual extinction of the baby boomers, you want to talk about overpopulation? We'll talk about overpopulation. Some of you people need to go. You messed up the world. You destroyed the family. It's time to move on. So, the younger generation is much more faithful, we see, as Catholics, right? Mm-hmm. Much more faithful, 40 and under, right? And vocations are booming in the U.S., and I think we're starting to see some of that. So it is frustrating. When we had our conference in Rome, we were there in the off season, obviously, so it wasn't crowded, which is why it was so cheap to do it there. But, we're around these great pro-life people. So we're in, like, the bubble. But I don't know. I'm trying to shine a glimmer of hope. In the end, I do think it's like a museum.
Yeah, it's a sad thing. It's a tragic thing. And I think, how did it happen? You mentioned various things. The French Revolution, I think, is the defining event of the last 500 years that nobody talks about.
No, the French destroyed Europe. Mm-hmm. They really did. And then we went over and saved them from the Nazis. But they absolutely destroyed it. And I think the French Revolution is one of the most understudied things.
Everybody talks about like Marxism, communism, and that's true, but all of that is really rooted in the philosophical underpinnings of the French Revolution.
Total hatred of God, hatred of the church.
And I don't think we realize the French Revolution is a part of our day-to-day life. You go to public school, university, government, like all of it just sort of assumes the basic assumptions of the French Revolution.
We pick on the Germans a lot, but the French atheists are by far scarier.
You think so? More than Cardinal Tom at the vigil and...
Oh, no. I'm talking about the intellectuals.
Okay.
Because that's how we got here. That's how we got to the overpopulation.
The existentialism you're talking about?
Yeah, that's how we got to the overpopulation and Descartes and all those insane people who wrote Nausea. Sartre.
Oh.
Sartre was horrible. And his experience on the existence of the human condition is in his book entitled Nausea. Okay? So,
Very French.
hey, I'm sure he was a lot of fun at cocktail parties. So, yeah, they're all just crazy. And in a sense, if you from the Catholic point of view, it's the other extreme with their saints. I mean, Joan of Arc, which is an unbelievable example of a woman, right? I mean, just courage and just everything. And, Thérèse Lisieux and all of the French saints. Sadly, I've seen it. St. Thomas Aquinas is, he's not buried. He's laid to rest in Toulouse. And Mary Lisa and I were there, and I discovered that he was there. He's in a government building. How in the world did the bishops in France lose the body of the most brilliant Christian to ever live, ever? It's just, it was sad. We went in there and we prayed. Kids are playing soccer out in the alley. And
He was stolen.
He was stolen, or I don't know, they could have forfeited.
I mean, all the churches are government property in France, right? Like Notre Dame is a government building.
Right, but I'm saying
yeah, I see.
It is a church that was gutted. There's no red light. There's no anything. So it's been totally gutted. And I don't even think they had a candle lit.
Here's why I have hope for the French. Is they're at least passionate. It's kind of, they're not the lukewarm that the Lord vomits out of his mouth. There's a passion there, and
they'll decapitate you.
You've described the pockets of faith that are still very much alive in France. I'd have a lot more confidence that the French will return to the faith than, say, the Scandinavians, who just seem to have no zeal for anything.
So Saint John Marie Vianney, another great French saint, he predicted that there would be a Catholic revival in England. And Robert has told me about this.
He's leading it.
Robert is leading it. And it's because Robert was ranked the 9th most influential Catholic in England.
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
You didn't know that?
I didn't
So this
either.
was it when he started leading 40 Days for Life. I don't know who did.
By who?
I don't know how official any of these ranked. World's greatest dad. That's better than just number one. But, so I don't know how official these rankings are. But it was in some magazine, some newspaper, and he was just our local 40 Days for Life leaders. I called. I was like, Robert, this is awesome. I saw this article. You're the 9th most, and there was only a top 10, right? It wasn't like the college football where it's top 25.
He can lord it over number 10 on that list all day long.
Exactly. And I think he's definitely climbed up. He's got to be, 1 or 2. So he said, of course, there's only 10 Catholics left alive in the country.
Oh, no.
He made a joke about it, but that was cool. So that's a little, I don't know if St. John Marie Vianney, was being delusional or he had an inspiration from the Holy Spirit. I'm hoping the Holy Spirit, but
I mean, that's interesting because you have predicted and others have predicted that there will be an American Catholic revival in the South.
There is one.
So
Walker Piercy predicted that, but it's happening.
I just think there's sort of an interesting thing there because the South is the part of our country which I would say is the least culturally and historically Catholic, and England is one of the cradles of the Reformation. It's just interesting to me.
But that's why.
Yeah.
That's why, because what we need to get rid of is the Boston Catholics who are yeah, my granny gave me the crucifix. It's neat. But culturally, the most anti-Catholic places become the most Catholic places. And so Walker Piercy's prediction, who was a Southern Catholic, said that because of slavery, that the South had their black eye. Mm-hmm. They know what it's like to bottom out, and then you rebuild. And his philosophy, because he was Catholic, was that if you're searching for truth, you'll end up Catholic. It was when he was asked, why did you convert to Catholicism? And he said, what else is left? And so, the whole thing was, but we're actually seeing that. And I was raised, the only reason I took my faith seriously is because of my Baptist friends, because they took their faith seriously and they'd roast me on scripture. I mean, they grew up it's like Producer John. They have the Bible verse competition when they're in the first grade, and we're over there learning the sign of the cross, which is great. But they would just toast me in scripture. So I had to get my act together and I read and studied and all that, but it was through their like inspiration / challenges.
Yeah.
And you can do something with. I remember the Irish priest coming over. It's 2% Catholic, and it was a dry county. They didn't serve alcohol, so they're like, what the hell, you know? But like they're like looking around, and they hadn't. I know one of them had never actually seen a Protestant. Like he was from like southern rural Ireland, right? And then he went to like boarding school and seminary. And he's like, I don't think he'd ever like talked to a Protestant. And they were inspired because they're like, they actually really believe this, you know, and you can work with that. You can't do anything with the lapsed anything, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what religion. But from the Catholic perspective, and this is something our Protestant brethren have asked me about because we've mentioned it on the podcast, and of course it's inspiring to them. They want, you know, religious attendance to go up in our country, but vocations are through the roof for the priesthood. Arkansas, Alabama, Texas. I mean, look at Houston. And I grew up in such a small Catholic area, but we moved to College Station, and it's like 35% of A&M is Catholic. You know, there's 22,000 kids a weekend at Mass. It's the largest, A&M's the largest Catholic university in the country.
That's grown so much since I was here.
I know.
I remember it was 15 or 17,000.
And you graduated in 93, 92? So
Shots fired.
shots fired.
From preschool.
Yeah. Still have that diploma. But, I mean, I don't even think about it, but like the church associated with our kids' Catholic school, it has 10,000 families. And I've explained this because the Protestants they do all this so much better than us. But they're just like, we have 22,000 members that go to this church. And you're like, great, got it. And we don't do that as Catholics. It's a family. So that could be an old married couple. That could be people like Steve and I's family.
5,000 families.
But they have 10,000 families.
Yeah.
Like, that's insane, you know? Like, smoke Joel Osteen, right? But they're not all there at the same time because there's 72 Mass times. So, you know, in multiple languages. But I do think that there are, in America especially, there is this kind of revival. But our point is that has got to translate into population.
Yes.
And that's...
Well, the three of us have been told for all of our adult lives that Social Security is, you know, non-existent for us, basically.
No.
So, and
that is what we're.
This doesn't help. Our below replacement rate doesn't help.
And the problem is that no politician on either side of the aisle will ever get rid of Social Security. They'll cut the post office before they do that. Like, it's just, they're not going to do it because it would cost whatever. It would be smart. I'm for it. I think it's stupid, but like that would kill that political generation, and then future generations would be like, they were really responsible. That was actually really a smart idea.
So to paraphrase the other quote, Social Security goes bankrupt slowly until it goes bankrupt all at once.
Correct, but they're never going to let that happen. They're never going to let that happen. Okay, so let's get into this to wrap it up. Why it matters. Number one, the economy. Like, can we just be like, I don't care. People have kids, they don't have kids, whatever. The economy.
It's not just Social Security, right? It's Medicare, Medicaid, Obamacare.
Taxes, jobs. I mean, we have to generate tax revenue to support the government. But obviously, it's more than the numbers.
You're saying that people aren't welcoming babies because they want to adjust the tax base?
Yeah, that's it was actually encouraging to hear this lady Sarah Harper say, that doesn't even work. You get a little blip, then they get their money, but then it doesn't do anything. Having children because you love children, and children are good.
There it is. That's the reason.
I know, and it's great. It really is great.
There's nothing more. I mean, we've kind of joked, Sean. You're a very optimistic person. I tend to have like a natural pessimism to me.
Europe is a museum.
Tell me I'm wrong.
Happy Friday.
But it's It's not so much, I think, a question of optimism and pessimism. It's a question of hope. And if you have a child, bring a child into the world, that is the most tremendous act of hope that you could possibly express.
He'll do anything. Like it's a mystery. But like you first lay your eyes on them and it's just like, I'm all in. I'll do anything to help you. I'll do everything to protect you. It doesn't matter. And that never goes away. That's why one of the things that gives me hope, actually, in just our society is how still what is considered the worst thing that can happen to you is that you lose a child. That's a universal belief. And you can have the craziest, angry atheist or whatever screaming at you on the street. But if you said, oh, yeah, my brother lost his son last week, they're going to be like, I'm sorry to hear that. So we still have that. We still value and know the natural value of children. But
simultaneously, we forget that.
Yes.
We know that, but we forget that.
And I just get tired of it. I get tired of the negative attitude towards children and having children.
But so on the flip side of that, and I don't want to, presume that, it's easy to bash Hollywood, but you've got all of these elitists and these celebrities in Hollywood, for example, who many of them are super famous. And they also have been known to brag about not having children, and that's why they're so famous, right? But you see, like, a lot of them are dying young from overdoses. A lot of them, it's like when they come in front of the camera on social media or something, bragging about how they're in their 40s and 50s and they didn't have children and they've had this great life because of that, because children would ruin your life. I get to a point where I'm like, who are you trying to convince?
Well, there's also a trend in the opposite direction, which is odd, but it's encouraging, which is like the Cameron Diaz thing, where she just says, I'm no longer going to act. And I'm kind of ashamed of some of the movies I did, and I want to have children. I think she had like 4 or 5 kids, and she just got out of...
I did not know that.
Yeah.
It's a name I haven't thought about for some time.
I know. She just disappeared to have children and like moved out of L.A. Yeah.
There are many actors and actresses who have had children and have continued on with their
careers.
careers.
Totally. But I'm saying she's an extreme because she like got out of it totally.
Yeah.
Molly Ringwald is the same from The Breakfast Club.
Yeah,
and she said she really regrets The Breakfast Club, and she has teenage daughters, and she's like, this is awful. And I was like 16 in that movie, and all that kind of stuff.
John Hughes is a pervert.
John Hughes is a total pervert. Home Alone's great.
It is great.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah. But stay away from Macaulay Culkin, okay, Johnny?
Because he was in Home Alone, too.
He was. Without Trump, Kevin would have never known where the elevator was.
That's right. That's right.
So what I'm saying is, like, you get, like, being pregnant. This may be a good or bad thing. I don't know. But the Hollywood, like, I'm pregnant, I'm going to do my Pilates, or I'm pregnant and I'm 6 weeks, or I'm 3 months, or whatever. That's like a positive, trendy thing, like having a baby. And that didn't used to be the case. Like having kids is like a cool thing. And now they interview, whatever, these celebrities that get married, and, they talk about the kids and all that stuff.
Don't show up in a restaurant with all your kids, though. That's just irresponsible. People give you weird looks, as you know.
They do, unless it's a Mexican restaurant, because they love children.
Of course.
During COVID, we went to a restaurant and they made our family sit at separate tables because there were too many of us.
Too many.
Yeah, we had that.
Oh, pathetic.
This makes a ton of sense. You can limit the spread by making sure you're scattering the family.
That's going to get in the same car and drive off afterwards. Yeah, it's great. We made a lot of mistakes during COVID.
I just think, though, I don't like to say, okay, if you are somebody, whether you're single or married, and you don't have children, well, you're miserable. And you have to be, because children are the only thing that can make you not miserable. But I think that
JD Vance backlash.
Oh, there you
go. Into JD Vance.
But I think like
For the record, Heather does not have a cat. We've covered that on previous podcasts.
I don't have a cat. The trend, though, that is I've seen lately, I know y'all have seen this, is not only do we not have kids, but we are going to make these cutesy videos to justify why we don't have kids and to show how happy we are. And most of the time, it's very heavily insinuating because if you have kids, you're miserable. And that's obviously we know that's a selfless thing.
Yeah. But
to have kids.
There's also, okay, I agree with you, but I'm going to go, I guess, on the optimism side too. There's this other trend that's like, it's not us, like we're too old. It's I don't know if they're Generation Z, but these 20-year-old-ish, 20s, early 30s moms that are like, I want to be a housewife.
Oh, yeah.
Like that whole thing.
Trad wife is coming back.
The trad wife
yes.
thing. And it's not necessarily a religious thing. It's like because what's her face is part of it. Gwen Stefani.
Is she?
She's with, what's his face? Blake Shelton. What's his name?
Blake Shelton?
Yeah.
They're still together?
Yeah.
Wow.
You name the babies, I'll name the dogs.
I'm a skeptic on the trad wife thing.
Okay.
Me too, but I'm saying that is like a trend, and you would have never thought in 1999 that would be like a trend.
Everyone's looking for their niche where they can be like, hey, look at how I'm different.
Exactly. But I think...
But you could say the opposite. You could say that things go back. Like we used to make fun of the 1950s wife.
Yes.
Who like ran and got her husband a newspaper and a beer when he got home from work.
Yes.
And now that's trendy.
Yes. It's trendy again.
Did you see the meme of Taylor Swift? People love to pick on Taylor Swift, but it's like nobody was talking about Taylor Swift like 2 years ago, and now it's like everything. But the meme was like, Taylor Swift has 100 songs on her boyfriend, how bad her boyfriend is, and not one song on how she made him a sandwich and fetched him a beer.
Jeez.
Back when Biden was still running, there was a great one about she made a whole career, become a billionaire of singing songs about her poor choice of men.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't listen who she's going to vote for.
Yeah. That's totally true.
That's a good point.
Okay, well, I think we've...
Moral of the story, kids are good.
Kids are good.
Make more babies.
And we're underpopulated not because Joe Rogan and Elon think so, but because of the math.
The numbers show
the
it.
numbers. And it is very believable. And I'll say, actually, when Bill Maher said that about, we won't miss you, and he was using the overpopulation thing, that's rare now. That's just because he's old. He's an old pro-abortion guy.
The
So
60s called.
he's
they won
using
their
the
talking point
stupid,
back.
swashed-up 60s, 70s abortion arguments. But they actually don't do that anymore because it's not true. And they're like, we told everybody the world was, overpopulated, and they quit populating it, and now we're underpopulating.
And we were all going to be starving by 1988 or 1992. Mm-hmm. And it's not an issue of overpopulation. It's an issue of food distribution.
Here's another thing. Before we close out, let me say the most controversial thing, and I think it's very sad. It's a whole nother topic. It's total rabbit trail. But I'm interested also in the growth of nursing homes. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't have children or a lot
you don't have people to take care of you.
You don't have anybody to take care of you.
Right.
And this is the funny thing out of the Vince Vaughn movie, Four Christmases, where he's like anti-child and totally secular. It's actually a funny movie with actually a good message. It can be crude at times, but it's a good message because they're totally selfish and self-absorbed. And then by the end, he's like, plus they're like little tax shelters. And then when we get old, we can move in with them, and like he's like seeing all the benefits of children or whatever in his mind. But that's an issue. There's nobody to take care of you, or the expectation is, I guess you kind of have this weird, awkward divorce between parents and children with this mentality. And like, how are we not taking care of you,
That's what Mother Teresa talked about, right? The greatest poverty she saw was not in Calcutta. It was in the American nursing home where people stared at the clock waiting for loved ones to come who never came.
Oh my gosh. Is that a quote of hers? That's brutal. And my father-in-law rotates on because he helps take care of elderly people. He got out of being an OBGYN during he's not retired. We would say he's semi-retired, but he won't say that. But he rotates around nursing homes. And it's like, it's so sad. And he just talks to people. I mean, he loves that.
But it's good, yeah.
It is. Nobody's coming.
That's
to
sad.
like visit them.
Well,
And so-
that's a whole other thing. Loss of respect for elderly and authority and all of that is a big reason for that.
I told my mom, I said, I will never allow you to go to a nursing home. You're going to live with my sister, April.
They fight over that, and everybody loves Raymond.
Love you, Mom.
Who's mom gonna live with?
Yeah, we're taking care of Mary Lisa's parents. And so, yeah, that'll happen. And I'm going to live with Bailey when I get old. Okay. Be sure to get your copy of What to Say When Part 2. It is probably, one of the top 5 books of all time?
At least.
Top 3, yeah.
Interesting.
So be sure to order that. You get free shipping, and you support our mission if you order it directly from us. So go to 40daysforlife.com and click on the store. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Heather. Rate, review, and share this podcast, and we will see you next time. God bless you.